I claim the moon in the name of our sovereign lady, Queen Victoria.
You're getting too much oxygen. You're actually...
When First Men in the Moon arrived in 1964, audiences expected another Ray Harryhausen spectacle with stop-motion wonders. What they got was far more intricate. A Victorian moon odyssey featuring insect aliens with 112 individually animated legs, lunar surfaces made of cake mix, and predictions about space technology that wouldn't exist for another 5 years. From Harryhausen's most time-consuming animation work to circus rigs faking weightlessness and soap bubbles creating explosive decompression, First Men in the Moon is loaded with bizarre production secrets. These are 15 weird facts about First Men in the Moon, where Victorian imagination met Hollywood magic. Before we launch to the lunar surface, make sure you're subscribed and hit the hype button so others can discover these classic sci-fi secrets. And trust me, the wild production stories ahead are worth the journey. Now let's explore the moon together. Number 1. The moon creatures were partially based on ants. Those twitchy, unsettling Selenites didn't move like typical movie monsters. Ray Harryhausen studied actual ant colonies to capture their movements. He wanted them to feel organized but fundamentally alien, something that operated on logic humans couldn't quite grasp. The tiny pauses he built into their animation weren't random. They mimicked the way ants communicate through chemical signals and antenna touches. Each jerky motion, each hesitation before moving, came from hours of observation. It's this attention to biological detail that made the Selenites feel genuinely non-human rather than just actors in rubber suits. They moved with purpose, but wrong purpose, familiar enough to recognize as intelligent but strange enough to unsettle. Number 2. The moon calf was almost cut for being too scary. When studio executives saw early test screenings, panic set in. The moon calf looked disturbingly realistic, too visceral for what they assumed would be a family-friendly adventure. They pushed hard to remove the entire sequence, worried it would traumatize younger viewers. Harryhausen refused to budge. He'd spent weeks perfecting the creature's undulating movement and grotesque texture. He knew it was one of his strongest pieces of work. His instinct proved correct. The moon calf became a fan-favorite creature, the kind of memorable monster moment that audiences still talk about decades later. Sometimes the things that make executives nervous are exactly what makes a film unforgettable. Number 3. Ray Harryhausen had to animate 112 individual insect legs. Every Selenite featured multiple limbs that moved independently, creating coordination nightmares for animation. This wasn't simple puppet work where you pose and shoot. Each leg needed individual attention, frame by frame, to create believable arthropod movement. The complexity was staggering. Some days Harryhausen managed only 4 frames per hour because getting all those limbs to move correctly in relation to each other required absolute precision. One mistake meant starting the entire sequence over. This became one of the most time-consuming creature sequences in his entire legendary career. The painstaking effort shows in every scene. Those Selenites move with an alien grace that no amount of computer animation has quite matched. Number 4. The zero-gravity scene was filmed using a real circus rig. Creating convincing weightlessness in 1964 meant borrowing from other industries. The production team acquired rigging typically used by circus acrobats, the kind designed to hold performers during trapeze acts and aerial stunts. Actors were suspended from these wires, carefully positioned to suggest floating. But there was a constant technical problem. Stage lights made the wires shine like silver threads across every shot. The solution required tedious manual labor. Crew members painted the wires to match the background, only to have the paint burn off under hot studio lighting. They spent hours repainting between takes, fighting a losing battle against physics and heat. The final effect worked beautifully, but it came at the cost of countless touch-up hours most viewers never appreciated. Number 5. The moon's surface was made of cake mix. Those dusty lunar landscapes that looked so convincingly otherworldly had a decidedly domestic origin. The production designer mixed flour, cake mix, and powdered cement to create the perfect moon dust texture. It photographed beautifully, catching light with that fine, powdery quality that suggested alien soil. There was just one unexpected side effect. The soundstage smelled exactly like a commercial bakery. Cast and crew joked about working in the world's largest kitchen. The sweet, yeasty aroma clashed hilariously with the serious science fiction they were filming. Imagine trying to sell dramatic tension while surrounded by the scent of fresh baked goods. Somehow they made it work. Number 6. Lionel Jeffries improvised half his lines. The actor playing Professor Cavor had a reputation for creative rebellion. Jeffries routinely rewrote dialogue on the spot, convinced he understood his character better than the screenwriters. Several of his best comedic rants were completely improvised moments that happened organically during takes. The director quickly learned to keep the cameras rolling because Jeffries often stumbled onto gold. His spontaneous additions gave Cavor more personality and quirky charm than the script originally contained. It's a reminder that sometimes the best character moments come from letting talented actors play rather than forcing them to hit exact marks. Jeffries turned what could have been a stock scientist character into something memorably eccentric. Number 7. The production predicted real moon technology. 5 years before Neil Armstrong stepped onto the lunar surface, this film featured astronaut suits remarkably similar to actual Apollo designs. The resemblance wasn't coincidence. The costume designers consulted available NASA research and made educated guesses about what practical moon suits would require. They predicted pressure helmets with gold-tinted visors, bulky life support packs, and restrictive joint mobility. When the real Apollo missions broadcast around the world, viewers familiar with the film experienced strange déjà vu. The movie had imagined NASA's solutions with surprising accuracy, proving that thoughtful speculation and good research can predict the future better than wild fantasy. We're halfway through this lunar expedition, but the wildest production secrets are still ahead. From overheating alien costumes to vacuum chambers that nearly collapsed. If you're enjoying these behind-the-scenes stories from classic sci-fi, hit that like button and drop a comment about which fact surprised you most. Your engagement helps us uncover more forgotten movie magic. Alright, let's return to the moon. Number 8. The Selenite suits overheated constantly. Actors sealed inside those elaborate insect costumes faced genuinely miserable working conditions. The suits trapped body heat with no ventilation, creating near-fainting temperatures within minutes under studio lights. Performers complained constantly about dizziness and exhaustion. The solution was crude but necessary. Crew members cut tiny ventilation holes into the costumes, just large enough to allow some airflow without being obvious on camera. Or so they thought. Modern high-definition transfers reveal these emergency modifications clearly. Watch closely in HD and you'll spot small holes that weren't part of the original design, evidence of the physical toll these practical effects demanded from performers willing to suffer for their art. Number 9. A real vacuum chamber was built for the air loss scene. When the script called for explosive decompression, the effects team didn't rely on cheap tricks. They constructed an actual functioning vacuum box with a miniature set sealed inside. The plan was to remove air and film the resulting pressure differential effects. Theory met harsh reality during the first test. The pressure difference nearly caused structural collapse as the chamber walls buckled inward. Engineers had to reinforce the entire construction before attempting actual filming. The final sequence captured genuine physics, real air rushing through real pressure gradients. It's dangerous, expensive, and completely authentic. The kind of commitment to practical effects that modern CGI artists can only admire from a distance. Number 10. Columbia wanted a giant monster fight on the moon. Studio executives looked at Harryhausen's sketches and saw missed opportunities for spectacle. They pushed hard for a massive moon monster, something that could provide a climactic battle sequence for trailer moments and poster art. Think King Kong vs. Godzilla but in low gravity. Harryhausen politely but firmly declined. He argued that random monster fights would distract from H.G. Wells' thoughtful story about exploration and first contact. The film needed restraint, not excess. Years later, he joked about the decision, suggesting he should have saved that rejected creature design for another project. But his instinct was correct. The film's intelligence comes from what it doesn't show, not from cramming in every possible creature effect. Number 11. The mooncalf was Harryhausen's favorite creature in the film. Among all the Selenites, caterpillars, and alien designs, Harryhausen held special affection for one particular creation. The mooncalf, with its strange proportions and gentle movements, represented some of his finest character animation. He loved the design so deeply that he kept the original model in his office for decades. It became a permanent fixture in his workspace, a reminder of what made this project special. The mooncalf is also one of the few stop-motion puppets from this production that survived almost completely intact. Most models were damaged or destroyed during filming, making this preservation even more remarkable. Number 12. The space capsule spin almost made the cast sick. The capsule interior was built on a rotating gimbal designed to simulate tumbling through space. During early tests, the mechanism spun faster than intended, creating genuinely nauseating conditions. Actors turned visibly green on camera, struggling to deliver lines while fighting motion sickness. Several takes had to be abandoned when performers simply couldn't continue. The crew adjusted the rotation speed, finding a balance between visual drama and actor survival, but those early attempts produced some genuinely queasy moments, authentic nausea captured on film before someone mercifully yelled cut. A dedicated mineral collector loaned the production something genuinely extraterrestrial. A small fragment of iron meteorite, actual material from space, made its way into the film. This wasn't just any space rock. It was a documented specimen that had survived atmospheric entry and been recovered from a verified impact site. The collector was apparently a fan of H.G. Wells and enthusiastic about the project's commitment to scientific accuracy. He offered the meteorite fragment on the condition it be handled carefully and returned undamaged. It appears briefly during a close-up when the explorers first examine the lunar surface, turning it over in gloved hands as they marvel at its otherworldly composition. For just a few seconds, audiences were looking at something that had actually traveled through the solar system, that had been forged in processes billions of years old. The irony is delicious. While everything else in the scene was fake, carefully constructed movie magic, the one thing that was supposed to represent alien material was completely authentic. Most viewers would never notice or know the difference, but the production team took pride in the detail. It represents the kind of authenticity obsession that separated great productions from merely adequate ones. They could have used a painted plaster prop that would photograph identically. Instead, they went through the hassle of borrowing, insuring, and protecting genuine meteoric iron. When you can use the real thing, why settle for imitation? That philosophy runs through the entire production, from consulting real aerospace research to studying actual insect behavior. It's that commitment to grounding fantasy in reality, even in tiny ways most people would never detect, that gives the film its strange authority and makes the impossible feel almost plausible. Number 14. The famous pressure dome collapse was done with soap bubbles. Creating the effect of bursting moon chambers required creative thinking about physics and materials. The script called for selenite structures to explosively decompress when exposed to the surface atmosphere, a violent implosion that needed to look both dramatic and scientifically plausible. Traditional miniature effects using collapsing sets or explosive charges looked too mechanical, too obviously staged. The effects team needed something that would implode naturally, something that would create that characteristic sudden collapse without visible rigging or pyrotechnics. Someone suggested soap bubbles, and after initial skepticism, tests proved the idea was brilliant. Special effects artists stretched massive soap bubble films across miniature sets, creating impossibly thin membranes that caught light beautifully and shimmered with iridescent color. The soap solution had to be carefully formulated. Too thin and the bubbles burst before cameras rolled. Too thick and they didn't pop with the right speed or violence. After dozens of tests, they found the perfect mixture that created durable films that would hold long enough to position cameras and lighting, but collapse spectacularly when punctured. When they popped, the implosion created surprisingly realistic vacuum effects. The soap film collapsed inward, with exactly the kind of sudden violence that explosive decompression would produce, pulling inward toward the point of rupture before fragmenting into mist. It was cheap, practical, and utterly convincing. Frame-by-frame analysis shows the bubble membrane collapsing in ways that match actual fluid dynamics, creating turbulent patterns as air rushes to fill the void. Modern audiences watching on high-definition displays might assume they're seeing early CGI or complex optical effects, never guessing they're watching soap and water behaving according to natural physics. The technique required perfect timing. Each bubble film could only be used once, and if anything went wrong during filming, they had to rebuild the entire setup and create a new bubble membrane. Harryhausen reportedly watched the first successful take with visible relief, knowing they'd captured something special that would have been nearly impossible to recreate with conventional effects. Sometimes the best effects come from understanding real-world physics and finding simple materials that behave the right way naturally, materials so mundane you'd never consider them until someone has a moment of inspiration. Number 15. The ending scene was shot before the script was finished. Production schedules forced filming to begin before every detail was locked down, a common problem in the era before modern pre-production planning became standard. The entire finale involving the vanished Selenite civilization was shot weeks before final dialogue existed or the ending's full thematic implications had been worked out. Studio executives had approved the basic concept, a haunting discovery that the moon's inhabitants had somehow disappeared, leaving their civilization empty and mysterious. But nobody had finalized exactly what that meant or how the characters would react. The team relied on rough storyboards and placeholder action, trusting they could make it work during editing. Harryhausen animated the Selenite city sequences based on sketches and vague descriptions, creating vast underground chambers filled with abandoned technology and eerily empty corridors. The actors performed their scenes with temporary dialogue that would be replaced later, saying generic lines about discovery and mystery that could be easily overdubbed. Bedford and Cavour explored the dead civilization, reacting to wonders that existed only in their imagination and wouldn't be added until post-production. It was filmmaking backwards, shooting the conclusion before understanding exactly what story they were concluding. The approach created unexpected problems. When the screenwriter finally delivered polished dialogue weeks later, some of it didn't quite match the actors' mouth movements or the emotional beats they'd performed on set. The solution came through post-production narration, recorded in a sound booth long after filming wrapped. Bedford's reflective voiceover, musing about the fate of the Selenites and humanity's place in the cosmos, was written and recorded months after those scenes were shot. It allowed the filmmakers to add philosophical depth and thematic closure that wasn't in the original plan. The narration transformed scattered visual sequences into a coherent meditation on the dangers of progress and the fragility of civilizations. It's a testament to strong visual storytelling that the sequence works at all. Harryhausen's images are powerful enough to carry meaning without words, vast underground chambers that suggest both technological achievement and terrible loss. When you have clear images and compelling action, words become secondary. You can always add dialogue later, but you can't fix bad visuals or unconvincing animation. The gamble paid off because everyone involved understood the power of pure cinema, of telling stories through composition, movement, and atmosphere rather than exposition. The ending remains one of the film's most memorable sequences, that haunting final pan across empty Selenite architecture accompanied by Bedford's melancholy narration about civilizations that reach too far. Few viewers realize they're watching a happy accident, a sequence that succeeded despite chaotic production circumstances rather than because of careful planning. First Men in the Moon wasn't just another creature feature with impressive stop motion. It was Ray Harryhausen pushing his craft to new limits, animating impossibly complex alien movements while the production team solved problems with circus equipment, cake mix, and soap bubbles. The film predicted real space technology, survived studio interference, and preserved H.G. Wells's thoughtful story despite pressure to add mindless spectacle. If you enjoyed exploring these hidden production secrets, make sure to subscribe, because the next journey through classic cinema's strangest corners is coming soon.